Hey, we're back. Hopefully part two, we will have better connection here. So we're trying to establish just exactly what is wrong and why it's showing us some things we're not liking. So we have already done our scallops down here at the bottom. And we have come up here and made a mistake, but it's okay. It's a cool mistake. But if you want to do it the right way, you're going to look at page 5. And when you're finished, it will look like this. So that would be nice. It gives you the instructions. Guess the teacher should have read the instructions as she did it. But now what we're going to do is we're going to work in this section right here. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my color of thread because I don't want to use that gold thread. I've got it all ready to thread the needle, but I don't want to use that gold thread.
Thanks, Linda, for sticking with us. And everybody else who's logging on. You guys are fast on logging back on.
But we're going to change to go with a red thread in this section. And in this one, all I'm using is a regular, pretty much what I would call all-purpose thread. Again, it is a 40 weight. It's what I used last week to quilt the back. And guess what? It appears maybe, quite possibly.
No, don't jinx us.
Okay, I won't say it.
Don't jinx us.
All right.
But gives us thumbs up if you guys are having a better connection.
It looks like I might get a new phone, actually. Because, okay. So, here we go. So we are going to...
Patricia said it's no fun reading instructions.
I know, and I agree with you. I look at pictures. That's why I give you guys pictures, because I'm a picture person. All right, so we are in this section right here, and these are your instructions, and they're pretty simple, okay? You're going to draw lines 2 inches apart. So my ruler is 2 inches. My strip is 2 inches. How much easier can this be? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this on here, lining up a line here and up there. And you can use whatever you want to use to mark this. But I've already used my best press. In my case, I use the Starch Savvy. And so I can use my Frixon markers. You can use chalk, you can use whatever you want, but because I have sprayed this with my Starch Savvy, I am able to mark on this and it will come right off. So I'm going to mark across here. I'm going to come down here. And the only reason I'm having you mark is because it always helps to have a landing spot to measure to. Because if you don't have that, even if you just get something twisted just a little bit to the side, then you're not going to have the perfect cross-hatching that we're going to do.
I might have missed it. Did you say you sprayed starches before you marked on it?
Yes, I did. 2 times. Actually, probably 3. So what I'm going to be doing here is I pick a spot. It doesn't matter. You can see the dots right here. I am going to work my way across in a V shape or a chevron shape. And then when I can go no longer, I'm going to come back the other way and connect. So let's go ahead and get started. We're never going to stitch on these lines right here. I don't want you to get confused by that. We're never going to stitch on those lines right there. So on this one, I need one little teeny tiny etching right up here in the corner because that's where I'm actually beginning. So I want to have that line so I know. So you can see that little tiny spot right there. We need to get our spacing gauge, and this is what a spacing gauge looks like. I have mine on a little lanyard. It makes it so much easier.
And yours is colored because?
Mine is colored because if I had a clear one, you couldn't really see what I was doing. So what I'm going to be wanting to do is put my needle right in that spot. Now, ironically, that is in the seam allowance. Now, yours might not be, but mine is right in that seam allowance. And so we're going to set that down. And remembering that I have my red thread in, when I raised this up, I had a hold of a thread there that didn't even matter. I'm going to go ahead and grab that thread from the bobbin, so I have both of them, the one from my needle and the one from my bobbin, are right there together. So when I pull that out, I have both of those red threads because I'm not changing from my bobbin. So I'm going to set my foot back down, my needle back down, and this one's going to be just a bit tricky. I'm going to turn it this way because I think it'll be easier for you to see. I need to hit that spot right there. Right there. So I'm going to set this against that foot, and I'm going to set my spacing gauge so this side is right where I want it to end up, and this is flat against here. Now you don't go at angles. It needs to be straight. So this flat side needs to come up against that flat side. And we are going to stitch, got to get a hold of it here. We're going to stitch right over to that spot. Interestingly enough, that whole thing that I just stitched is not ever going to be seen because of the fact that it's going to be in my seam allowance. But that doesn't matter. We still want our designs complete wherever they are. So now I'm going to be coming from this point down to there. Now I don't line up my 12.5-inch arc with where I need it to be. I measure away from there so my needle lands right in that spot. So that distance from there to there is the width of my spacing gauge. And I'm just going to come. If there was ever a time when I needed my extra piece, what I have is just an extra piece. So Megan, maybe you can get it for me.
I'll make you one.
All right, because all I do is use a piece from before. I can suffer through there, but it makes it easier. So I'm going to set this right here, and I'm going to...
That's all you do, right? Just a little piece folded
No,
over?
I need my little 3-inch by 18-inch long piece of just an old piece. So I'm going to come over to this and stop right in that intersection. And this is the fun with a small project like this, because I can just twist and turn my fabric however I need to. And you can see I got right to that spot. And now, even though it's just a short piece, excuse me, just a moment. I'm going to come right back out to this spot here, and the way I'm going to do that without having anything to measure is I am going to be using this line back here that I've stitched right on my ruler. So all I did was I took this and lined it up, and now I'm going to stitch right to that edge. So we've got one side finished, and now what we're going to do is we're going to come to this point and come down and back and zigzag or go the chevron across there. Now you can cut your thread at this point because it's right over here in the edge, and then fortunately this, well, I shouldn't say fortunately, I know where it's supposed to be, but it's clear up here. So I'm going to show you, I finally have a piece of my fabric. This is just a scrap. It's the same thickness. And what I'm going to do here, you're going to say, why didn't I think of that? Is I'm going to extend this line out onto that so I know where the intersection is. Seems kind of crazy. I'm not actually stitching out there, but it's how I know where to line up with my template. So keeping that side by side and lined up, I'm going to set my template in place as if that was where I put my needle down. So watch what I do. I put the needle down, or I put the foot down, but not the needle. And I'm going to set this here and come down and measure with my spacing gauge. And all I'm going to do is come onto my fabric now, and then I'm going to pull that thread up. Now that I know where it's supposed to be, I can pull the foot up to get the other thread to come up from the bottom. And I will tell you, I'm going to put my black fabric back in there to measure, because some of you are going, oh, I wouldn't trust that. And that's kind of the way I am on it. There we go. So now that I've got the thread up, I'm bringing this back in, aligning it, setting it back down, and giving it a test to see if it's where it's supposed to be. And since it is, I can come right back down, and now I've crossed that. I can get rid of my piece because I'm not going to need it right now. I may need it again in a few minutes. I'm going to turn this. And now you've got several ways of measuring up. And these are things that you just kind of learn as you go. So I can take one of my lines that goes across on my template, and I can line that right on the stitching line. And I'm going to come down here, and what do you know? It's exactly where it needs to be. Now, you're probably thinking, then why don't you trust that and not draw all those lines? It's just because I like to have a couple of ways to measure up. It just makes it a little bit more secure or I shouldn't say secure, accurate, so that when we stitch that cross-hatching, even though it is cross-hatching, it's done on a 2-inch piece, and it makes it a little bit more noticeable if it's not lined up. So we're going to come straight off of here now. And on that one, the only thing I had to line it up with was this previous stitching. I'm going to cut those threads, and you can see our cross-hatching. Now I'm going to, with the magic of television here, we're going to have Megan iron that out real quick. And just like that, those lines are gone, so we have finished the cross-hatching in that space. I'm still really liking this, you guys. I think this is really cool. I haven't had that happen before, but this would even be cool if there was another fabric underneath there that I could template quilt that and cut those out. If you're not familiar with that, it's like you put a pico fabric underneath here, and then I cut that out. Oh, wouldn't that have been cool if I used that glitter that glitter stuff we have?
Some gold glitter ones that have been
Grab
really
one
pretty.
of those so I can show them. There should be it right over there in that tub. Yep, down there on the bottom. If you've never seen that, I could have put a piece of this glitter fabric underneath just that section. Ooh, now I'm getting excited. This is what it looks like, and you peel the front off of it. And when you peel that front off, this fabric right here, you can actually stitch through this, and you can put an iron on it. It doesn't matter. And those would have been that color. So if you've ever seen all of these, Kimberbell has a lot of this kind of stuff for embroidery, but we also use it in our quilting. That would have been really cool. Just have to remember that one. And that's, write those things down when you come to those ideas. And if you're not one to write them down, take a picture of it, as you think of it. You could just lay that right up against here and snap a photo.
Patricia thinks that would be a really good border design.
Oh, it would be. It would be great. And, there's a lot of things you can do with it. So what we just finished is this one right here. Ours isn't quite that long, but it's in that section there. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. This is going to be a lot of fun, okay? You're going to probably want to make some notes, but we're going to be doing this section next. So this is going to be our little flower section. And so that's on page 7, step number 4. And we're going to be putting that in this section right here. So that's like, okay, so it's going to be in red and it's going to be in this gold section. What am I going to use? So I want to make sure that it shows up. I want to do it so it looks nice. And so I'm thinking on this one, maybe green. What do you think, Megan? Do you think green would be there, or what should I use?
Green would show up on both.
So I think what I'm going to use is this green. And again, this is a polyester thread, and that's what we're going to use on that. So I'm not going to change my bobbin because this is a 40 weight, and that's also a 40 weight. And I'm going to use this polyester thread because remember, I just pretty much look for colors and see what I like. And again, we can still leave that same needle in there. It's always fun to get in your thread stash. That's probably as bad as my fabric stash for me. I can tell you, I have plenty of threads. So now I always put my thread underneath my foot so that it's not just on top of that foot. Now, how are we going to mark this? Well, what I used for what I'm doing is a 6-point crosshair square, and I happen to be using the minis. Now, I will tell you, I went ahead with a permanent Sharpie and marked right on my template. I've done my large ones the same way, that this is a 6-point, because it's just easier for me to find it and know what I've got. Now, you'll notice on here that it's put on there at an angle. Because what we want to do is we want to get our flowers or our stars or whatever we're doing here, we want those to be able to go to the top and bottom and open up like this. Because if not, they would actually have one that points right to each other, and it's not as pretty that way. Now, you may like it that way. That's perfectly fine. But these are going to be, you should be able to fit 3 of them on here. And by my directions, I put it so that you would come down on this particular seam line. You would come down 3 inches to start. So I'm going to turn my ruler the other way, and I'm going to look. If I put one at 3 and at 7, then I'll have another one down here at 11, and that might get off into the toe. So I'm just going to push this back just a little bit so that the one that's at 11 will still show, because I know it'll still show up here at 3. So even though that's off a 1/2 inch, we're just deciding where those are going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little mark here at 3 and at 7 because I want these 4 inches apart, and up here at 11.
And we had the question, what marker you used, so I waited till you pulled it back up. What is that? This
is a Frixon Fine Liner, and I have sprayed my whole stocking with I use June Taylor Starch Savvy. But you can use Best Press, you can use all different ones. Megan just grabbed this. This is my Starch Savvy. I just like it a little bit better than the other one, but you can do whatever you want. I'm not paid by anybody to say anything. I just tell you what I use because you asked me. And so now that I've sprayed that and put 2 layers of that on here, so in other words, I sprayed it, I pressed it dry, I sprayed it again and pressed it dry. And I did that probably about 3 hours before the show started here. So I know that it's dry. You want to make sure that it's dry, because if it's not, then it's going to be as soon as your marker hits it, it's gone. But what it does is it creates a barrier between your marker and your fabric so that your marker is not actually seeping down into your fabric. It's on the top of the surface. So I've got my 3 spots here, and that's what this is telling you up here. It's showing you how you're going to lay it out, but it's also showing you that the centers are 4 inches apart. Now, after I mark it with my small one, so if you only have the big one, you're fine. That's not going to be a problem. But after I mark it with my small one, I am going to then extend the lines a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and on this, I'm just going to go ahead and use my chalk marker because I'll be able to see it. Now, you'll notice because this is a 6 point, you can either put this on here at an angle or you can line up the ones going straight across like this, and then you don't have to put it at an angle. It'll all work the same way. I just don't want these coming straight out on the line. So if you're making a mark and it's in the seam allowance, it's not where we want it to be. That's the easiest way to say it. So here's this, and I'm going this way, and I'm going to go that way. So you can see that mark right on there.
And the mark you're using now?
This is a Clover Chalk Pen. It is a dolphin tip, and I've refilled it. I never used the chalk that it came with, but I refilled it with Pounce Iron-Off chalk.
And you don't use the chalk it comes with because?
That does not iron off. Good question. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to mark this one, and I'm going to mark this way. Now, you heard me say I want these lines longer. So I'm just going to take my 6-inch, well, my straight edge here that comes with the foot, the cross, or the 12-inch arc, and I'm going to make these lines longer. Whoa, that one's bad. You can see it almost brushes off. I'm going to make these lines longer, and I'm going to do this center one first, and then I'll make the other lines longer too. Now, you can use multiple rulers, any different ones. You could use the Spinifex 8, which is what I actually used on the stocking last week, but I actually found out I like the shape of this one. And this is Circles on Quilts Wreath number 11. Now, ironically, you're looking at that going, oh my gosh, that thing is huge. How's she going to get that on there? Well, I wanted to show you a couple of extra things that you can do. And so what we're going to do is we are going to use this with the 1/2-inch Echo Guide to get our flower. So this is the 1/2-inch Echo Guide. Let me put it up here on the red so you can see it. And that's what's going to go on our foot. But I want to show you when I was designing how I came up with this, because some of you may not have thought of this. When we do our templates and we draw, we just don't go into the middle of them and draw around here, because that would not be the shape that we are going to get, or the size. It might be the shape, but not the size, because we have to allow that extra 1/4 inch. So we use what's called a stitching line disc. But if I use just my stitching line disc and drew this, let me come over here to the side so that we can see this. If I just use my stitching line disc and drew that shape, you can tell that's way bigger than what I need. So what I'm going to do is, and this is like one of those things, it's like, why didn't I think of that? I'm going to set my Echo Guide right down there in place and set my stitching line disc right in that. And now when I stitch it, it will be true to the size that I need. So you can see the difference in the size. So that's the one I'm going to use. Now you could use it so that this was the center, or you can use it so this is the center. I think that the poinsettias look more like they're pointed, so I'm going to use this as the outside edge, and this is going to be my center right here. So when I was drawing the pictures for you, I actually did what I just showed you. I took my template, I laid my Echo Guide in there, and then I simply put my stitching line disc right in the inside of that so that I could then draw. So if I was coming out here to do one out here, I would position my center of my stitching line disc, I would line up my lines, and I would draw around like that.
Oh, I obviously wasn't paying attention. I now see that you put your stitching line disc inside your foot.
Inside my Echo Guide. So if I was doing something, remember we used Echo Guides last week on our foot, but if I was doing something where I was using this one to design, I would simply set my stitching line disc right on the inside of that and use it. So it really is an easy way to get your paper designs to be exactly like what you're wanting to do. So I just wanted to share that. If you don't have Echo Guides and stitching line disc, I'll tell you what, they are wonderful to get everything designed and ready to go. Now what I want to do with this is I'm going to take my fabric, because if I don't, I won't have enough space. I got to get rid of some of my tools here in my work area. I don't have any room.
While you're doing that, what was the name of the template you're going to use again?
The template that I'm using, great question. It is Circles on Quilts, wreath number 11. And I know it comes in a lot of different sizes, so I probably should tell you, this is one I used a couple of weeks ago, but this is the 7.5 inch. So if I used it to make the design that it's showing here, this doesn't mean anything. It's where I started for something else. So let me take that off not to confuse you. I love my ruler stickers, but when I don't need them, I just need to get rid of them. So I'm going to take my templates and kind of clean up my nice big work area here that had kind of become small. And I'm going to come in here. And I didn't need to put this in yet, but while it's there, I'll just leave it. When you're using an Echo Guide, you need to be able to see or read this 0.5. If you have it upside down, and the only reason I'm telling you this is I had an email about this week saying they couldn't get it on their foot. It's because the bottom is a little bit smaller than the opening at the top. So in other words, it's not a cylinder, it's more like an open bowl. So when you do that, you are going to sit this underneath here. And I like to I'm going to take my template out of there because that's just confusing you right now. I'm going to take my thread. This is the expansion slot. And I'm going to put that in that expansion slot so it doesn't get caught. So I can control it. And then I set my foot down right in that circle. And when I pick it up, I'm going to pull it up onto my foot so that when I put the foot back down, it just goes and glides like it should. If it's down too far, you can see I can't move my fabric. Nothing's happening. So I have to pull that foot right up onto, or the Echo Guide right up onto my foot and make sure I've still got room to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise it again, and I'm going to put my template underneath here, and I'm going to come right to the center of those lines. Now remember, I have these lines extended, and I'll extend these lines later. But I'm going to go ahead and, with my foot down, find the dead center, and I'm going to take, and I've got a line back here that I'm lining up, and I've got a line in the back that I'm lining up. Got to get my thread uncaught. So that's why I extended my line, because even if I just line this up and don't get this out here lined up like that line originally stopped there, then I'm not probably going to have an accurate flower. And where that'll show up, because you're thinking, oh, so what if this is off a little bit? Yeah, but down here in the middle, things won't look good. So that's why we want to extend those lines, so down here in the center, everything gets lined up like it's supposed to. So let me get my thread up. This can be a little tricky when you've got all of this going on here. So I've got my thread down, or my needle down. I'm pulling it up, and I'm raising up my foot. And just think of it, your foot just grew. So I'm pulling that out. Wow, I've got enough green here to go to Greentown. For those of you that know around here, that's about 15 miles. So let me pull this out, and I now have both of my threads controlled. And I'm going to put that back down, needle down. But before I start, I've got to make sure my template is hugging my Echo Guide. And so now I just stitch like I normally would and come right back to the center. I'm going to do this one. I like to do opposites, but I'm going to do this one this way so that you can see it. My foot can go down just a smidge more. So I've got that one in place. I'm going to now come to this one so you can see it. And even though this is lined up, I need to look at the back and make sure that's lined up also. Oh, isn't this fun to be able to do all of these different things just with the same templates, only just by using some little piece that's extra, you get a different size. So I've got a line right here. Again, don't forget to look at the back. Let's see here.
Patricia said you could also use this method on a bag. That'd be really cool, Patricia, if you did that. I like that idea.
Has anyone been counting? I don't know if I've done 6 yet or not. I'm joking, you guys. All right, we got one over here. But before I stop, I'm going to make sure I've done all of them. You'll notice when I come to the point up here, it doesn't come clear up into that point. That doesn't matter. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got all of them now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my needle up, bring the foot up, and I'm going to pull this out. And I'm simply going to trim both of the threads. And I'm going to take the threads from the top, and what my idea is on this is I'm probably going to put a crystal right there in the middle. And so I'm going to take these 2 threads, and I need a seam ripper to get a hold of them because it got caught under there. So just be real careful when you pull them up. We don't want them to break. And so then what I can do is I can take all of these threads. I'm not going to take the time. Well, yes, I am, because I haven't done this in a while to show you. I take a cinch needle. The cinch needles are side threading. And so I can just take all of those and pull it right into that. Got one more. Got another green one. And I'm going to go right back down the center. And when I do that, I'm bringing it to the back. So all of those top threads are now on the back. I don't have anything here in the center. And I'm going to flip this over.
Hold on, we're out of screen. There we go.
This I've done a little bit differently than what I originally taught you. I have found that it's better. This really wouldn't matter because of the fact that this is going to be covered with a lining. But in many cases, it's not. So I take 2 threads and one hand and 2 threads in the other and just tie 2 knots. Come back and get, and this would work even if this was a quilt back. Come back and get my threads and then just bury them underneath. Now this is just burying them in the batting because there's not any other fabric, but it works the same way. I pull it a little bit tight so that when I cut that, then it'll go back in underneath there. Now you might like one of the other methods. Some of the other educators just do their stitching back and forth a little bit and then just cut them off. I kind of like to bury my threads. So now, does anybody have any questions on that? Because I've got 2 more to go. And so I need to finish them so that we can get to the last one so we can construct our stocking. So I'll go ahead and start, and Megan can let me know if you have any questions.
I don't see any questions that I don't think we've already answered, but if you send them on in, we will get them answered.
So what I'm doing right here is I'm extending these lines. I'm going to come to the center. I'll walk it through in talking again because you might have stepped out for a second. I'm bringing my thread up. needle up, foot up, pulling my threads out so I've got control of them. I'm taking my template, setting it back in there, find that center, and needle down. And then we want this to hug right up against our template. And so what I'm going to do is I want to make sure I've extended those lines so that I can get them. Oops, sorry there, guys. I know I just sent you for a little bit of a roller coaster. So I'm going to line this up, line it up in the back. I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Again, I'm looking in the back, lined up in the front. And because of that placement, you can see that this whole flower is going to show. Whereas if I'd have done it the original way with accurate, right at the edge, it wouldn't have stitched out very pretty.
JoJo's got an idea. She said with going around twice, darken the thread.
It would, or use a heavier thread.
What weight again are you using?
I'm using 40 weight. So on the last one, I'll just do it heavier and see if I'll go around twice and see. I don't want to do this one because I didn't start with that. So I got one down here. I will tell you, when I'm doing this, sometimes I totally forget and look at it when it's finished and go, it's missing a petal. And because of the way you place yours, you may have, there's one here that's missing, you may have fabrics that they show up even better than that. But yes, you could go around twice. That would be fine. So I'm back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So it's all a matter of design preference, because you could have it blend in if you wanted with a different color. Or...
And absolutely, that's a good point, Megan, because I could have done this with an 8-point. You could have had 8 points on there. That's not a problem. I used a 6-point because I thought it looked more like what I was intending for that to be. You going to show them that while I'm
I am going to show them this one. So while she's doing that on her practice, one, she did it so that the threads actually kind of blended in a little bit more. And I think, aren't those metallic
That's
threads?
A metallic thread there, yeah. Okay, so I've got my threads here so that I can pull them to the back.
All right, I'm going to move this. There we go.
So one more time, I'm going to catch on to those and just send them straight back to the back. And like I said, my intentions are when I'm finished, I'm going to put a hot fix crystal on there. Oh, that thread didn't get caught. Okay, so again, I'm taking 2. You can take 2 of the same color. It doesn't really matter. You just have to have 2 and 2. And I'm going to tie a knot and another knot and bury my threads. And like I said, it doesn't really matter on this one. I could have just cut them because that is going to be with the lining. So one more here to do real quick. And I'm going to extend those lines. And I'm telling you, even if we weren't in a class here, I would still extend these lines. It's not like I'm doing this just to say, you know, well, you can do it or you don't have to do it. But I will tell you, if you don't, you're going to wish you had, because it's just hard to match it up if you don't do that. To the center, foot down, needle up, foot up, and because the thread is long, I can floss underneath there. I can get a hold of both threads. And now all I need to do is put my template underneath. Again, my foot down, make sure I get right back to the center, and I'm going to line this up.
Janice would like to know, could you use the couching foot to make it more pronounced?
Sure. Actually, I'm trying to think. That's the decorative ruler work foot. And glad you brought that up. The decorative ruler work foot allows you to actually stitch down a decorative thread. In other words, you're going to have a thread that you are, as she said, couching, but you're doing it with the templates. So yes, that would work.
Tracy wants to know, when you're doing that knotting, does the knot need to be a square knot or just a two-tied overhand?
Well, actually, they call it a surgeon's knot. So it's tied one way, and then I switch the threads from that hand to the other hand and tie it the same way, because I can't do one way and then the other. So that's what I was taught years and years ago for whenever you're securing a quilt thread. Oops, I almost did it again. So I said I was going to go double on that, and I forgot. Sorry, guys. So we've got those finished. One more quick little knot. I'm going to take off my Echo Guide, and hopefully I didn't catch my threads this time. Ooh, look, I didn't. Okay. That's why I had to get my seam ripper, is to undo them with that, because they were underneath some other stitching. So I'm going back in the center.
Yeah, Carol, we were going to go twice around that, and we forgot.
I'm sorry. I forgot until it was time to tie the knots.
Nancy commented that you have to sew forward only with the couch on that foot. So is that
correct?
Okay.
Yeah, that's, oh, almost cut that off. I want to bury it. And again, it wouldn't really matter on this. I could just cut it off, but burying it is what I would do if I actually was on a quilt that was finished. So that's the way I'll do it here. All right, so I'm going to give this to Megan to press out my chalk. And we are going to go to the very last one. It is so much fun. And we only have one space left. So we are going to go and do the between the lines. Now, when you look at this one in your instructions, you're going to notice that it's kind of heavy on one side. It looks like I messed up. That's because of the way we need to do our stitching to make it continuous. So you can see here all of that chalk just pressed right out. It looks like we got one spot we need to go back and press out, but everything else is out of there. And I could put some little jewels in the middle. I can put them out on the outer edges. You can do quite a bit of decoration there. So now I want to change back to my red thread. So I'm going to go back to my regular 40 weight thread. And because we're sewing on the green, I want to be able to see it. And how could I have put that on there so good that I can't find the end of it? There it is. All right. If I'm going to talk about, just for a second, if you are using a metallic thread, you want to make sure that it sits in a vertical position and has room to pull out. So like you want to be able, the spool needs to set here and come up into some kind of a cone type of release. So even though I just have a small spool of thread, I have it on my machine with a rack like at the top, like an antenna, and that's how it's feeding off. So it doesn't really matter for what I'm doing. It does solve a lot of problems though. So if you don't have one of those antennas on your machine, you might want to get what we call an auxiliary spool pen or a cone holder. And if you get one of those, make sure you get the ones that are metal, because the plastic ones just fall over and are worthless. So put a little bit of extra money. I think they're like $12 or $15, but it will make it so much easier. I love it whenever I'm doing my ruler work to be able to have a machine that has one of those antennas on it. Now, for what we're going to be doing now, this is what we have to do. This section, remember we started out with 2.5-inch strips. So with each side off of there, you now have a 2-inch. So 1/4 inch off of each side for your seam. So we are going to be drawing a line right straight down the middle. And so if you have one of my longer rulers, all you have to do is place it right dead set on the middle, because if I put it here, it's exactly 2 inches. So I'm going to put that right in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, because again, I've already put Best Press, or in my case, Starch Savvy by June Taylor. And I'm just putting a line down the middle. So I've got a line right down the center there. And this time what I'm going to be using is one of my favorite little templates. And it is called Between the Lines 1/2 inch. And the Between the Lines has on it etching marks. So you can see those right there. So we can keep that lined up. That's a way that we can work with the lines. So I'm just going to be using this dead center one, because I drew that line right down the center. And so I'm going to come right down here to the beginning. You can see I don't want to stitch off this edge, but I'm going to pull up my thread. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch around in a circle, and I'm going to stop here. Well, I need to be up to the other side in order to continue on by pushing this forward. So that's why in the picture here, you see a little extra out here on the side. It won't look like that when we stitch, but I wanted you to know that I went around that and then went up that side again. And then I go to the other side and around that and up the right side. Go to the left. So we are stitching over one of the sides, but we want to alternate that so that it doesn't look like it's all heavy on one particular side. So I'm going to start right here. I'm going to put my foot down, and since I'm off in that border edge there, I am just going to raise my needle up and get a hold of my thread, and I won't even need to secure this at the end because it's out in my seam allowance for when we put our stocking together. Now, I'm going to just make sure I'm lined up this line and that line. I'm going to start here and I'm going to go around, and I went around again and I stop at the top. I simply move up, line up, in the back also. You can see it's lined up over here on the side. This time I go to the right and around twice. I move up, and by now I can get these threads out of my way. So I'm going to get both of them up underneath, from underneath there. We'll cut them out here in a second. And this time I'm going to go to the left. Oops, I went the wrong way. Not to worry. When I get back down here, I just go back up this side. Push this up. Go this way. Push it up again and go the other way. And this is one of those things that after you get going on it, you're having so much fun that you totally forget to pay attention to the directions. As far as, I don't mean directions like instructions, I mean like which way you're going left and which way you're going right. So that's why I told you, if you make a mistake, you can back it up and go the other way. Switch directions at the bottom. But it just makes it easier. You can do this same thing with your 2-inch circle. Well, what we're going to do is, after we do this, we are going to come back with a straight edge and put lines on either side.
Which, let me tell you, I'm going to show them real quick. Any other teachers think that this looks like kindergarten, where we have the lines in the attic and the basement? Maybe it's just me because I'm getting ready for school.
It could be that, or maybe it looks like what you had in music class to draw the staff and put your notes on. lot of disappointed people. We're in Indiana, and yesterday they announced that they've canceled all marching band seasons in Indiana for the schools. Having been a band junkie myself, that is pretty disappointing, I can tell you. All right, so I'm up at the top now. All I need to do is cut it. And so I've got my little circles going right down the center there. And all I need to do now is get my and I'm going to put lines right down either side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my foot down, lined up with where I think it needs to be, and I'm going to put my template right on the line because that should be 1/4 of an inch away. And then I'm just going to stitch right down the sides. Basically, I'm joining all of those together. And if you're one of those people that wants to check for sure, you can check with using your spacing gauge. I'm going to cut. I'm going to come back. This time, I'm putting it right on the line I just stitched. I'm out in that margin again, or that what will be the seam allowance. I'm going to cut that. And interestingly enough, you can see what's going to happen here. I need to start clear down there. So I need to line this up right on my line, but I'm going to be down here. So I want to grab my extra extension piece. I don't ever want to sew this, but I need to put something in here. Let me get the solid black so it doesn't deter you from seeing what's going on here. And I just need that extension piece to grab onto because I need to stitch starting right there. And so I'm off of my edge, and I don't want to have my template grabbing onto my glider. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that. And I'm going to come back this direction. I'm going to, somehow I flipped it over. I'm going to line right on top of my line, just like I did. Put my other little piece underneath here to grab onto it. Well, I got to go even farther. This is a little tricky, but I'm just showing you why it works and how it works. So get yourself just a little extra piece of fabric that has batting so it's the same thickness, and it'll make it so much easier for you.
So it looks like all of our technical problems have been solved, but my phone just told me I only have 5 minutes left. So if we go dark, give me a second. I'll get us back on as soon as we can.
Well, we're not going to go dark because what I'm going to do is I am going to stop at this for today, and we will finish up next week. I will have other things too, but we will finish up with the construction because I'm going to show you a real easy way to put this together, and I don't want to shortchange you on that. So since it's not Christmas yet and you don't need them tomorrow, we'll come back next week and we'll finish putting it together. But don't you just love this? I just love that between the lines there. And I'm going to hand it to Megan so she can press that line out. And I'm going to thank you for putting up with our situations at the beginning today. I'm oh so sorry, but so glad to know there's a resolution to it. And so you can see what the stocking looks like. after we've completed it. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, you can put these anywhere you want. It does not matter. I just wanted to give you some things there that you could do. I also want to show you this has not been done yet. My intentions on that are I am going to use the gold ruler here. I'm going to do the short side first, because then I don't have to worry as much about mashing it up. Oh, I didn't think that was threaded. There we go. So we'll finish up the stocking next week. And if anybody's got anything that's burning that they want to ask, right now would be a good time to do that. And I will try to show you some other designs next week that maybe you could do in the place of this one. Boy, I need my piece right here. And just like that, I've got the top part done there, and I know you guys can't see it, but we'll see the effects of it with the quilting part. And on this side right here, we're going to line this up, draw that chalk mark so it's like just so that I can line up. I won't mistake this one this time. It goes in the valley. And if you forget to do this, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal.
Leanne wants to know what that glittery gold fabric was for that you had earlier. That was for the template quilting, right? That we could have done?
Right. I could have put a piece of that. And you know what? That's what I'll show you next week, if I don't forget. That's what I'll show you next week. And I'll also show you how I affix those hot crystals. But since we had our issues at the beginning, we've gone a little bit long, and we'll just pick that up next week. But here's our stocking, if you want to pull that phone up, Megan, so they can see the whole thing at once. And if you have any questions, let us know. I'm sure glad we got our problems resolved, and next week we'll have a, maybe the beginning will just be seamless. So thanks for joining us. We really enjoy it. Remember, there's a link on your front page there that you can click on to get to order those supplies, anything that you're needing. Again, I really strongly encourage you to get echo guides and stitching line disc because they will expand the ability to design and draw and do all kinds of different things. So thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. We'll see you back here next weekend. Bye now.